Greetings. I understand this article as a story. Nevertheless, in this story, there are many truths inside of it. The title of it is Anunnaki Geneticists created our bodies, not our souls. It is written by Khali, and I will put the link in the video description. Approximately one half of the human beings on Earth, about 3.5 billion people, are organic polos, soulless human beings who keep real human beings in line with the status quo, on agenda with the matrix control system. By the way, if you think that I'm not reading quick enough, just go to settings and select 1.25. Organic polos form the backbone of the matrix social control infrastructure. I will make a little quick comment here. I don't like the word matrix much because it refers to the matrix and the woman, so there should be a better word describing this situation, but I will use it as it is written. They are what keeps society running in a state of preoccupation with the mundane. From cradle to grave, soul humans are pressured to stay with the status quo and not ask dangerous questions. Anti-people, puppet people, cardboard cutouts, drones, organic polos, background characters. Why do these terms even exist? Because out of necessity they had to be invented by those who independently noticed the same posing phenomenon, one of which there is no official name. Some people seem to be missing something very important inside. While they are not necessarily any less intelligent, successful, or physically healthy as anyone else, they nevertheless show no indication of having any higher components to their consciousness. Over the years, some people came to the same conclusion. They noticed that some people were strangely one-dimensional and hollow inside. This observation is not hard to miss, but it is easy to rationalize away, especially with modern society being so heavily brainwashed with the politically correct but unrealistic concept that everyone is completely equal in every way, which ignores functional differences due to environmental, genetic, and most importantly, metaphysical factors. A considerable percentage of the people we meet on the street are people who are empty inside. That is, they are actually already dead. It is fortunate for us that we do not see and do not know it. If we knew that a number of people are actually dead and what a number of these people govern our lives, we would go mad with horror. These are interesting times. On one hand, there are changes happening on a global scale that can't really be ignored much longer. On the other hand, the majority of the population seem to live their lives as if everything is just as it always is and always will be, locked in a tunnel vision of personal and material interest. While soul humans have a divine spark of consciousness that gives them the ability of individual self-awareness, organic portals lack this divine spark and are only dimly conscious in comparison. They belong to an animal-like group soul that exists, evolves, and incarnates collectively rather than individually. While each soul human has a relatively unique energy shaped by that person's awareness, experience, and essence, the energy that animates one organic pole is the same animating any other. The human species on Earth is not a family, but rather is an aggregation, heterogeneous group of beings with many different soul origins, that is, souls that came from many different planets. And of course, and that's why I'm saying at the beginning I was saying that I read this as a story, okay? But on the other hand, there are many truths contained in it. That's why I'm reading it. And of course, humanity is also made up of soulless organic portals too. The Anunnaki merely created our bodies, not our souls, for those who have one, that is. Nor did the reptilians create our spirits, but more on all of this later. Everything in this virtual reality requires a consciousness, whether a true or artificial consciousness, to drive it. This means that even a grain of sand has a consciousness. Even things much smaller than grains and sand have consciousness. The consciousness must maintain the illusion of motion throughout its body during its entire lifespan. Nothing exists in the virtual reality unless it upholds the illusion of motion. When the illusion of motion ceases, the organism dies and the consciousness driving the body leaves it. More and more people are now beginning to believe that there is life after death. This is true only to a certain point. One could ask, if there is life after death, is there death after life? There are three basic categories of consciousness in the virtual reality. 1. True light consciousness. 2. False light consciousness. And lastly, 3. Artificial consciousness. Artificial consciousnesses encompass the ones created totally evil and the ones created like robots by darkness. The ones created of total darkness include the ones I have referred to as the soulless ones. However, they are not to be confused with the artificial ones created by the Anunnaki alien scientists. The false light consciousness created by darkness have a mixture of true light particles in the consciousness. True light particles trapped in this category of consciousness are the hardest to rescue, as it requires a very delicate operation to separate them from the evil embedded alongside of them with as little damage of the true light particles as possible. When physical life terminates, the ones of artificial consciousness cease to operate until the artificial consciousness is put onto body to drive it. An artificial consciousness is akin to a replacement engine that is put into another body. For all intents and purposes, it is like a spare part that does nothing until it is put into another body and reactivated by putting it into motion again. It is this sleeping between comas phase when they are not in motion that characterizes these consciousnesses, because they lose their awareness of being. Thus, an artificial consciousness is like a robot that is started and stopped by darkness. For these, there is no afterlife. However, the soulless ones, between commas, amongst the artificial consciousnesses that are designed to promote and maintain absolute evil, are usually allowed to continue in another process, which enables them to generate and maintain evil from the various levels of the astral planes. These are not the ones put on the shelf, so to speak. They can sometimes appear to be good guys or spiritual masters in the astral realms. They are allowed to experience a form of artificial, between commas, afterlife in the astral world, which in itself is an artificial reality. Hence, it is an artificial reality within an artificial reality. In other words, they reside in a virtual world within the virtual world in the astral reality. Most of the inhabitants of the normal, between commas, astral world do not have free access to their planes without permission from darkness astral administrators. When a true light consciousness vacates its physical body at the time of physical death, it continues its awareness because its awareness does not depend upon motion, as it is the case of an artificial consciousness. The false light consciousness, with a mixture of true light particles and false light particles, also continues its awareness after physical death. Therefore, darkness has to develop special activities and things for these types of consciousnesses to occupy themselves with while in transition from one body to another, in order to keep the charade going. There is a link to exposing the reincarnation deception your soul is enslaved in the article. Continuing to read. It is important for darkness to maintain the deception of the virtual reality, and specifically of death, so that the consciousness thinks it has died and been reborn. Such ones usually reside in the astral world of the virtual reality until it is time for them to re-enter new physical bodies by the process called reincarnation. Reincarnation is really a very evil imposition on the consciousness. It is done under the false pretense that the process of death and rebirth is in the best interest of the consciousness for its own purification and advancement. Reincarnation causes most people to lose almost all their memories of their past lives. It actually obstructs one from advancing in knowledge and awakening to truth. This, again, is by design to benefit darkness. Unbeknown to many, the Akashic records in the astral world, the records of supposedly everything that has ever happened since the beginning of the universe, has been tampered with to suit darkness. As already stated, artificial consciousnesses are put to rest after the death of the body they were driving, and they require motion to be activated and reinserted into another body. However, motion is an anomaly for true divine consciousness. That which is natural to an artificial consciousness is intrinsically unnatural for true divine consciousnesses. Hence, the state of a true light consciousness that is being extinguished is even more pitiful than that of which an artificial consciousness that is oblivious and will not awaken from its state of rest until it is reactivated by darkness. As stated before, a living body can be occupied by a true light consciousness, a false light consciousness, or an artificial consciousness. However, the physical bodies, all categories of all consciousness, are made up of matter and are influenced by the programming embedded in them. Horrible destruction of true divine beings has been going on since darkness created this putrid virtual reality. No wonder the agents of darkness hate anyone who tries to awaken the slave between commas of darkness by taunting, persecuting, and punishing them in all sorts of ways. These days, the agents of darkness employ cowardly ways to attack, defame, blackmail, or threaten anyone who dares try to spread truth. It gives darkness and its evil agents great satisfaction each time that it extinguishes a true divine light, contrary to some beliefs. Light does not need darkness to balance itself, nor does light need darkness to coexist. However, darkness does need light to sustain it. In fact, darkness is a parasitic and vampiric energy that sucks the life out of true light beings in order to survive. Darkness has only been able to do this by erecting an elaborate house of horrors known as the virtual reality. I prefer that term, by the way, instead of matrix. Any true light beings, because in this matrix, well, just the word matrix, think about it. It refers to the mattress. And who has a mattress? Woman. So it's not very good for women that we are using this specific word. Any true light beings who enter this house of horrors are immediately preyed upon by agents of darkness, and assassination between commas attempts commence as quickly as possible. That is what the war between good and evil is all about. The light is about to rescue its own from the clutches of darkness, whilst darkness fights to hold on to every one of its prisoners between commas. Assassination between commas occurs at the moment a true light being gives over its will to darkness. This can be done by trickery, deception, temptation, bribery, punishment, torture, or other means. Those who give over their will are then fallen between commas beings, and for all intents and purposes are beings of darkness. It should be understood that darkness has not the power to take any true light being's will by force. The will can only be given over to darkness by the true light being. The light within true light being is a permanent divine spirit. It is shine between commas forever if the will is not given over to darkness. But if the will is given over, darkness seizes the permanent light between commas and drains it from its life force. The true light being is then given a temporary artificial consciousness encased in a soul between commas in exchange for its true divine spirit. Thereafter, the being only has light that is generated by perpetual between commas motion. The divine spirit shines by itself without depending on physical motion. There is no physical motion in the true divine realm. As mentioned earlier, darkness imposes its illusion of no motion between commas upon its virtual reality. By use of this illusion, beings think that they are stationary when they are moving very rapidly. For instance, people on the earth think that they are standing still even though the earth is rotating daily and revolving yearly. When the illusion of no motion is broken, the illusion of motion will be impossible to maintain and all motion will cease. Then, when nothing moves between commas, only the viable true light consciousnesses will shine. Everything else in the virtual reality, including plants, animals, humans, planets, suns, galaxies, etc., will dissipate. I'm not the one saying that. That's why I'm reading that as a story, like I said in the very beginning. But, again, there are many good information and truths contained in this story. In my humble opinion, it is a story. Now the author may say something else. Continuing to read. In effect, this is how it is assured that all of the viable true light will be gathered and taken home, and none of the artificial or fallen consciousnesses will be. Thus, no artificial beings will be accidentally left behind, and no non-viable beings will be mistakenly admitted to the divine creation. Darkness dreads its own demise. It fears that one day it could be extinguished by its own handiwork, so it prolongs its existence by extinguishing the true light beings. Before it dies, it cruelly desires to take as many of the true light beings down with it by deceiving them into relinquishing their will to it. This assassination of true light beings cannot be allowed to go on any longer. Darkness has created the illusion of time and slowed things down, so it appears that this virtual reality has been in existence for eons. But this is an illusion. In fact, the virtual reality has only been in existence for a very short interval. It is transitory and temporary and will soon be dissolved into nothingness. From the perspective on Earth, the rescue mission appears to be like a tortoise race due to the illusion of time that makes it appear to be a long time in occurring. Further, death has so shortened human lifetimes that it was almost an impossible task for the Christ or any divine messengers to bring down sufficient information and fully awaken to their roles in one lifetime. The rescue mission will be completed before the divine will allow darkness to self-destruct and dissipate into nothingness. It is a time to rejoice for those who have held into their will. The time for liberation from darkness is drawing closer and closer. Darkness will soon be unable to reactivate its artificial consciousnesses. Everything that is created by darkness will cease to exist when the illusion of motion is fractured and darkness empire will be no more. Death will disappear forever when this virtual reality self-destructs and vanishes. It is undeniable that everything is a slave to motion. Without motion, everything stops, including the processes known as a physical life and physical death. Death is so obvious in this world that everyone has encountered it one way or the other. Many fear it, some shun it, whilst others even deny its existence, but it continues inexorably to punish and chase us all. Everyone's life is spent on avoiding death and delaying the encounter. Those who deny that death exists are seen as abnormal or as having some form of psychological disorder that causes them to deny death. Since ancient times, people of our cultures and religions have ardently pursued a cure for physical death in the name of physical immortality. They are driven on this quest at the deepest level of their existence because they fear death. Ironically, the deity responsible of death is the being most fearful of death, of its own demise and annihilation. The deity has embedded and programmed this fear into everything that lives between commas in this world of illusions. Many humans who have explored the fear of death have concluded that all living things have a survival instinct. What has been referred to as a survival instinct is really the programmed fear of death that infects all living things, including plants, animals, and humans. This programming is deeply embedded into every particle of matter because every particle of matter has a thought form from darkness that contains darkness fear of death. Darkness is so frightened of its own demise that even the smallest building blocks of the physical universe's matter are throughoutly saturated with the instinctive fear of death. Fear of death is a morbid disease. It was created by a putrid, demented mind. It is this fear that will eventually topple the entire virtual reality. People pursue immortality even though almost everyone knows at the deepest level that the concept is absolutely absurd. Everyone knows that physical bodies ultimately decay and die, yet the absurd quest of immortality continues. It continues because the deity responsible for this virtual reality is insanely hoping against hope to find a cure for death, not to abolish it, but to use it to benefit itself. The deity is afraid that one day it will die. It wants immortality, it pretends to be God, but it is not eternal and it seeks eternal life. The contradiction here is that when death is conquered, the true light's rescue mission will be completed and the malevolent deity's entire empire will collapse. Ironically, death is the very total darkness invented and imposed on everything in its domain, the virtual reality, that is, to control and enslave its creation and all that are trapped in it. Death, amongst other things, wipes out memories to make it almost impossible for anyone to see through the lies and illusions of this virtual reality through the process of reincarnation. To understand that, one needs to first understand the beginning of life in the virtual reality. In the true divine creation, there is no motion, there is no vibration in the way we know it here, there is no physical movement as we know it here. Darkness invented motion. That was its first illusion. From the illusion of motion, darkness created everything in the virtual reality. This includes even the illusion of no motion, the illusion of things being stationary within the illusion of motion. Darkness used the illusion of motion to form matter by compressing spirals of its thought forms, which are the foundation of all things in the virtual reality. The formation of matter in the beginning of all life and death in the virtual reality. Everything created from matter has a beginning and a end, a birth and a death. This is by design of darkness. When all the illusions fall, darkness will be fully exposed, and those particles that comprise darkness that are remain true to the light and held onto the will shine. All the others will dissipate into nothingness as darkness fractures. So even the prison known as the evil mind will shatter, as any particles within it that still hold onto the divine will be released, freed from the self-imposed prison of darkness. The contradiction of darkness is that it requires true light particles to exist, yet it almost must assassinate true light particles to drive its putrid virtual reality. Were darkness to assassinate all the true light particles, it would self-destruct into nothingness. The rescue mission was launched to free the imprisoned true light particles and halt the insane, self-destructive activity of darkness founded upon death. Strictly speaking, in the end, even darkness is being liberated from itself and its twisted creation based upon senseless wastage, suffering, and death. Soon all the viable true light beings will be in their true divine home, where there are no sour notes and nothing can play out of key. Everything in the true home is in true harmony, true balance, unconditional love, beauty, power, and true light. I will put the link of this article in the video description, as well as the name of the author. Very, very, very good story indeed, and many gems into it. Thank you for listening.